expert care from people who care. Hello, today we are here at the Outreach Teen and Family Services office. We're your podcast hosts, Jackie and Gina, and we're here today with Maggie Zangara.
Hey, hey!
Hey! Today we're going to be discussing our passion projects.
So we're going to start with just a couple questions that we can all answer real quick. A little fast five. So first one, morning classes or night classes? I'm a morning class type of person.
I myself.
I'm a night class person. I love night classes in college.
Really?
Yeah.
I would always just get so tired by the time I had to go back out to class, and then I'd be like, oh, it's dark, especially in the spring semester when it's winter at the beginning and you're like, oh, I don't want to walk to class in the dark.
Yeah.
All of my classes right now are night classes. So literally Monday through, well, not today, but Monday through Thursday, every single night. And so then it's just...
The long ones, too.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. We're there until 8:30.
It's kind of nice, but it's... I don't know.
Every day is just a lot. But
Yeah.
Also, that's grad school, though, too.
Yeah. And I think that's what I'm really leaning on right now is undergrad. I never had an 8 a.m. all through undergrad.
I've never had an 8 a.m. either.
And I'm proud to say that for myself.
I might have to change my answers if it was an 8 a.m.
Yeah.
My morning starts at 9:30.
Yes, that was always me in undergrad. Grad school is commonly night class based, and I actually really enjoyed it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So what's your favorite class this semester?
I would say, I'm trying to remember what my class is even on right now. I'm a blank. I would say probably I'm taking a clinical psychology class. And as I've talked about before, I really like it. But as I've talked about before, I want to go into counseling. And that's what I plan to do for grad school. So it's really interesting. It's giving me, we're only a couple weeks in, but it's been giving me a good base and really confirming that I think this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So yeah, what about you?
What a great feeling.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
seriously.
Oh, because I've felt the opposite a lot in my undergrad experience.
Sure.
It's really comforting. But
Yeah.
So actually right now I'm taking this cross-cultural perspectives course. And it's on the representation of the prison systems in the 21st century. So it's so fascinating. We actually just went on a field trip this past week.
Did you go to the jail?
Yeah.
My friend took that class and she loved it.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Just reading all the excerpts from different prisoners and just hearing their perspective of things and how we should formulate that within our...
It's super interesting.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
I'm currently taking a class.
What are you taking?
So part of my professional development is I'm taking an animal-assisted psychotherapy certification.
Oh.
So I'm in my second class right now. I'm learning all about animal welfare and the ethics that involve teaming with a therapy dog in a session with clients. So that's been very interesting, and I'm excited to dive in more.
I'm actually taking a psychopathology class right now, and we were just talking about animals this week
Really?
and how that can really help. Yeah, no, so when you saying that, I'm like, oh my gosh, just thinking about that.
Yes.
That's super cool. Okay, so I kind of just touched on this, but Jackie, do you know what your future plans are as of right now?
As of right now, I just applied to grad school, so still waiting on that.
Same.
I know.
Congrats, those applications are tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank God that's over with.
Stressful.
Give me an interview. Please, make it worth it.
Yes. But yeah, hopefully becoming a clinical psychologist, and then I'm also talking with some people in the Harrisburg government area to work in human services as an internship for this summer.
Cool.
Yeah, so hopefully that works.
Yeah.
Hire me.
Love it. Okay, so I guess briefly we'll start out. This is kind of...
Well, do you have any other plans?
Oh, well, I guess I can re-explain.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've just been applying to counseling programs, mental health counseling programs. Super excited. I haven't heard back from any yet, but
the deadline just ended.
Yeah. Well, I think my one goes to like February 1st.
Oh, well, yeah.
So yeah, I'm not surprised I haven't heard back, but I'm anxiously waiting.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of just my future plan. Go with that. Become an LPC and maybe work with an organization like Outreach later on as a cute. And then as well as probably having my own.
That would be so full circle.
I know.
And I feel like this actually brings up a really good topic that I don't know if everyone's aware of, but Outreach does accept interns. So that's undergrad interns interested in psychology as well as grad school interns. So if you're interested, you can find more information on our website. And I am the contact person. So if you ever have any questions, you can always find me as well, Maggie Zangara, and I'd be happy to talk more.
Okay, so then our topic today is going to be, a little bit personal to Jackie and I about our passion projects that we've decided to think a little bit about. So just briefly, Jackie, do you want to say what your passion project is?
Yeah, so my passion project is on dementia, and this is just more so on like personal experience and like coping with that, some of like the leading signs, I guess, that you can identify, and just also helping like destigmatize that.
Yeah, love it.
But what about you?
Mine is about identity, which I think, usually it's like this idea of finding who you are, but I'm kind of interested in all of it, like finding who you are, but also when things change and you feel like you've lost a part of who you are and what that means, and kind of building back up those things. So why is the topic relevant to you for dementia? Just
personal experience, pretty much. Just want to let others know, that it's okay. And then, again, it's just not talked about like frequently. So I just feel like it'd be nice to bring up a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I have experience with it, and I'm sure a lot of people do too. But, yeah.
What about you?
I would just say that I think I definitely had to deal with the loss aspect of my identity from the transition from high school to college. And there was a lot of rebuilding and trying to figure out like who I was in a lot of different realms. And so we're about to make another transition again, and with that transition is going to come probably another loss of who I am. And so I think it's just a really important topic to realize that these transitions happen throughout your life, and just learning ways to try new things, rebuild yourself, realize the parts that are constant, and accept that some things are valuable. Maggie,
yes,
are any of these topics relevant to you?
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm so excited just to dive in with your passion projects. I think dementia is a topic that is really challenging, not only for the person experiencing it, but for their social systems and their family system, and how that impacts those systems as a whole. And I think identity and growing and developing is something it is the human experience, but it's so challenging at the same time.
For sure.
And this idea that like change is the only constant, but we as people commonly struggle with change, and that can be like internal struggle or external, right? Depending on what that change looks like. So I think I'm just ready to get into it. Let's do it.
We would like to pause and thank St. Clair Health for being our annual sponsor for the 3rd year of our podcast.
At St. Clair Health, we're always improving, building on our commitment to face the challenges of today, making an impact on the communities we serve, so we can be stronger together. St. Clair Health, expert care from people who care.
All right, so for the first half of our show, we will be talking with Gina and discussing her passion project on identity. So, Gina, do you want to tell us like a little bit more about your passion project, like what you've been working on?
Yeah, for sure. So, like I mentioned, I'm talking about this or thinking about this idea of identity and what it meant to me, what it means to the people around me. And I think there's a lot of pressure, especially in early years, in early high school, to find where you fit in, and then kind of let that, sit into that and let that label you in a way. For example, in high school, I danced, and I felt like that was my whole identity. Like when someone asks you, like, oh, like, who are you? What do you do? It was, I'm a dancer. And I'm a student. Like those were my two answers. And there wasn't really anything. And then it would be follow-up questions on dance. And I'm sure people can relate to that for whatever you do. I think even it made me think of, growing up, that idea of really finding one thing and pinpointing it and making it your identity, in the sense that like I did a variety of sports growing up. In middle school, I played lacrosse, and I also danced. I also played volleyball. And there came a time towards the end of middle school where I was hearing from all of my coaches, my teachers, that I had to pick one. Like, you can't do all of it. You have to pick one and you have to stick to it. And so I think because I did, and I picked dance, and I put so much energy into it. I would dance after school, 6 days a week. And there were times when I was dancing for the school. I was dancing outside of the school. It really was a big part of my identity.
Yeah.
And so then whenever I went to college and I decided that I didn't want to do dance anymore, I was burnt out. It was really weird because I had spent so much time doing it. It was such a big part of who I was that when someone would be like, oh, okay, like, tell me a little bit about yourself, I was like, oh my God, what do I say now? Because that's all I used to say, because it really was like all the time when I wasn't at school, I was doing dance. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so like confused. Like, okay, like I'm a student at Pitt. I'm an undergrad student at Pitt. I think I'm going to major in psychology. Like, I don't know. But at that point, I still didn't really know what I was going to do. And so it was so hard. And like, it took a long time for me to rebuild who I was and the other aspects of myself that kind of started to form into my identity, and realize that that was a normal, natural experience.
Sure. I think it can resonate with so many people, because there's normally like a sense of pressure when somebody asks you, like, tell me about yourself, right?
Favorite question.
And it can be it's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the times it's because we have these roles in our lives, right? I'm a student, I'm a mom, I'm a counselor. And then we also have these things that we do with our time. Yep. I choose to dance. I choose to, do theater, whatever it is. But then when I actually think about what is the definition of identity, I don't even think it's those things.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, how did you come to better understand your identity?
I think it honestly was, I think it was a variety of things. I think in the realm of, those like roles and hobbies and things, it was really just trying new things, finding what I enjoyed. And for a while, when my mom would be like, oh, like, you need to try things, like, you're creative, you lost that creative outlet, like, you need to do something, I'd be like, well, what am I supposed to do? I don't like to paint. I don't like I would just start listing all the normal things that people do as hobbies, like quote hobbies. Yeah. And, like, I don't like those things. I don't want to do those things. So, like, I don't, like, what else am I supposed to do?
Sure.
And so it like really took some time for me to find things that I like to do outside of that. Now I would say that I like to do yoga, like, I like recently got into bullet journaling. Like there's hobbies that I do. But aside from all of that, I would say that I had to start realizing that there was things in myself, like my personality, like those things are usually pretty constant. Like how I react to situations, like the way I am as a friend, the way I am with my family. Like those are things that I think fit my identity more than just like the things that I spend my time doing. Like I would say that I am an extremely loyal person, sometimes to a fault, but if I think that someone is like my person, or like it's like end game, like I am there for you, like and so like I think that that's something that I think is a part of my identity. Like I'm very loyal. I would say that I'm pretty outgoing. Like I don't know, like there's different traits about myself that I've come to really appreciate, and so I think it took a lot of like introspection and trying to figure out the parts of me that I'm like, okay, yeah, like that's what makes me me, not because I chose to take a Pilates class instead of a yoga class today, or because like I decided I wanted to go play pickleball. Like that's not, you know, like those don't, I mean, they are parts of us. They're things that we enjoy. But, you know, I think it's focusing on the constants that like bring us to even try these things or do these things. It's like, what are you comfortable with? Like, who are you in a more personal manner?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I just Googled identity. And the definition from Oxford is identity is the fact of being who or what a person or thing is. Whoa. So really, to me, like how I kind of think of that is it's more so traits. Right?
Sure.
It's how would I describe myself is what I would think of my identity, like loyal, adventurous, right? Like these types of things that then can help guide us to know what we would like to do with our time and help us to find roles that would go well, would be a good fit with our traits. And I think that is something though that isn't really commonly discussed as we grow up, right? It's like, what do you want, what sport do you want to play, right? Or what do you want to do? Do you want to play an instrument or not?
What's your favorite subject? And then it sticks with you like the whole time, right? You can't, like, that was like I mean I really like math, I'm a math nerd, but like it was like always a thing, like that I liked math. Like it was like well, her favorite subject is math, like whatever. And it's like, well, it's not really relevant to like anything. But like it was, but like what does that say about me? Like, not like you know, like it's it's a part. I do like math. I've always been good at math, so that's why I liked math. It came easy. Like, But it's just like it's super interesting the emphasis that people put on certain aspects of an individual growing up, and then that's what you think is important to you as an individual. Like, okay, well, like what makes me special is the fact that I'm good at math and I like to dance and I'm good at it and like all this stuff. So it's like then that's what you put emphasis on. So then whenever you, for example, in my situation, I went to college and I didn't dance, and I took my first chem course and I was like, what is going on? And like, it was all like, so like everything that I like felt like were very consistent and concrete about who I was, like are starting to give and are starting to look different. And I was like, so what does that mean? Like, who am I? And it like took a lot for me to be like, okay, like even though those things are interesting about a person, like they're not who you are. And things change and people change and classes are different and chem math is not the same as calc math, and certain things are like you don't like it's just different. And just because you like, I was always, that was the other thing, I was good at chem in high school, why am I not good at chem in college? It's like it's very different and things change, and I was never good with change. But I feel like I had so much change thrown in my face in the year 2020 that I like kind of had to stomach it all and be like, okay, like we just have to wait and see what comes out of this change.
Sure.
And every time I found that it ends up being better on the other end. Like, change happens, and even if it's not necessarily better, it's not detrimental. You just kind of have to ride the wave and
it can lead to growth.
For sure.
And I think that's something that is a way we can look at change differently.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Instead of this like kind of like stigma, like no, I need to avoid this change from happening. It's like embracing change and how can I learn more about myself as a person.
Do you think like in 2020 you were reflecting a lot on your self-identity and kind of just trying to figure out like who you are as a person?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that, so I went through like a series of events that were all, I feel like, just unfortunate and scary at the same time. And so like, obviously, second semester senior year of high school was whenever everything happened. We took that, what was supposed to be a week break, and then we never went back type of thing. And for a while, I feel like your high school identity builds up to a couple main events that happen at the end of your senior year. And we did not have those main events. Like, so for me, like, I went to Mount Lebanon and we had a senior prom. So I had never been to prom. That was something that I was like so excited for.
Yeah.
And so then whenever it got canceled, I was like, you're telling me I'm never going to go to a prom in my whole entire life? Like, that was like, for high school, like, it was building up to that point. Like, that was everything. And then we didn't have graduation, or at least in any sense of normal fashion. And I actually boycotted the graduation, which I don't think I didn't go because it was like drive up. You had to like, it was like one family came up at a time, you drove up in the car, then you got out of the car and you grabbed your diploma, took a picture and got back in and you left. Like, you couldn't stay for anyone else's. And I was so upset about like not having anything. I was like, I'm not going to that. And like now looking back on it, like, it wouldn't have hurt to go and take a picture, but I was just like so upset with everything happening, and I was like, this is not how it was supposed to be. Like, this is not like how it was supposed to end. And then going through the rest of the year, we went to college, and I had like it was like I didn't have a roommate because it was social distancing, so I sat in this dorm room by myself and had way too much time to think. And college, I think the transition between high school and college, or any transition, is always hard, and that change is always crazy in a normal year, let alone during that experience. And so that was also just crazy and so much. And then I also went through a breakup with like my high school boyfriend, it was like my first heartbreak. So that on top of everything, I was like, oh my gosh, like nothing, like the one person that I thought was consistent, the one like thing that I thought was consistent, I wasn't seeing my family, like everything changed like in an instant. And I was sitting there like in my dorm, I just remember like being like, what is going on? Like, so I feel like on top of all of it, like that year was just like in a year that I would normally already be thinking like, okay, like who are going to be like my new friends? Like, what are going to be the new things that I do? Like, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? What classes am I going to take? Like, normal questions that are already kind of like scary and like a little bit like, you know, you have to dive into at that time, became 10 times scarier because it was harder to make friends, and my classes were all online, and I wanted to sleep through them because I was tired and I was sad about everything, and like it was just like everything at once, and I felt like I didn't have any way to like really find my new self in that moment because, well, first off, there wasn't really anything to do or anywhere to go because everything was shut down. They didn't have any clubs at the time. There wasn't because obviously it was too hard to do the social distancing stuff. But then at the same time, it was like when it started to get cold, like you couldn't even go outside because like they put up these tents with like these heaters and you could go, but it was still freezing and like no one really went in. So like you could only have a certain amount of guests in your room. Like I had a double room technically, but I lived in it by myself. So I could only have 2 guests because that was technically how you could sit far apart in the room to be 6 feet apart. And you couldn't check in anyone into your dorm that wasn't already living in your dorm. So it was like me and the girl that was supposed to be my roommate. Like we would go and we would just sit there and like, what do we do? Like, and like in the normal, I would always hear stories be like, oh yeah, you just like walk in and like people will leave their door open in the dorm, and
So
like
much fun.
you'll just casually like run into people. I was like, well, this is not my experience. Like, I'm just sitting here like, and we just like, what do we do? Like, I don't know. So I think it was like really hard to even like try and start to reform my identity, specifically because of all the chaos that that just was going on around me.
Yeah. And I wonder, Gina, if you experienced this, but I can imagine for some other college students at that time, and all of this change happening at once, as well as other like versions of loss that you experienced. Do you feel like it was also hard to find or to connect with yourself because some of this change like creates doubt?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that was probably the most disconnected I've ever felt from myself. Like sometimes I think back to my freshman year in college and I'm like, I don't even like it was like a dream. Like I don't even remember like what I like, because a lot of it was I wasn't really doing anything. I was just laying in my dorm room by myself watching whatever show and eating a bag of goldfish. Like that was my routine every single day. I would walk down with my mask, I would go down to the little thing, I would buy a bag of goldfish, I would come back up, and I would just lay in my bed and eat my goldfish. And like for me too, like I'm like a pretty social person. Like I love being with people. And so that was already isolating, but then on top of that it was like I feel like just so not like me. Like I was so uncomfortable with the fact that like, oh, like I didn't make friends right away. I don't have this group of people to hang out with. Like what does that mean? Like even the things that I thought were constant, like, oh, like I'm good at talking to people I don't know, like I'm good at whatever, like those things even seemed like they were like I wasn't good at that anymore. Like I was uncomfortable like talking to people, like I wasn't. So I did feel like super disconnected from myself, like who I thought I was, like. And I think that that's probably, at the time I thought that it was like a just me thing, like I was really like struggling, but then I started to realize after having conversations with a lot of my friends that like I obviously, like many times, like you're not alone in the way that you're feeling. Usually other people are feeling that way and it just takes a conversation to figure it out. But for a while in those moments I was like, well, if I'm gonna spend time with people, like I want it to be fun, because I don't get to spend time with a lot of people. So you don't have those conversations, like you're not, and they're also new friends. Like I'm not gonna sit there and dump all of this like oh I'm really going through it to like these people that I barely know.
It's like trust hasn't been
exactly
solidified yet.
And I think it was even like when I like my new friend, the girl that was supposed to be my roommate, I like cried for the first time about my breakup to her, and I was like, oh my god, this is so like I don't want her to think that. But then I was like, that is so ridiculous. Like she's probably gone through it, like the person down the hall has gone through it. If you cry over a breakup, that's normal. That's normal. So I don't know why I thought that I was like, it's like I was like, oh my god, she's gonna think I'm crazy, like I don't even know her and I'm crying to her about this person she doesn't know. And it's just like, I think in that time you just feel so, or like I felt personally like just so like detached from everything I knew was true.
Like to the core of your identity, right? Like I'm an extrovert, I like meeting new people, to all of these different areas that we spoke about too, like roles and just really transitioning to a whole new phase of your life. So I think the last thing I want to ask, and then I'd love to hear more about Jackie's passion project, is what are some things that you have found helpful when you are now, you seem a lot more confident in your identity, and I'm wondering if you could, give 2 to 3 tips or tricks for maybe some other people who are listening who feel that disconnect and don't know how to go on that journey back to themselves?
Yeah, I would say first, I would say to just try new things in the sense that, like, you know, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, but not, like, you know, like, for me, even, like, trying yoga, it was outside of my comfort zone, but I tried it in a very comfortable way.
Yeah.
Like, my friend worked there, so it was so easy for me to take a class with her and then just see how it was, and then, like, continue to take class with her till I was comfortable to go on my own and I was confident in my practice. So, like, I feel like a lot of people are just like, push yourself out of your comfort zone, but that's a lot harder to do than just to say. So I think finding ways to do so in a comfortable way, if that makes sense. Like, like finding ways to try new things, but maybe if you, like, want someone to be there with you, you know, like bringing someone along for the ride, like figuring things out until you get comfortable enough to do those things on your own. And then I would say outside of, like, the roles and the hobbies and those type of ways of identity, I would say just trying to find attributes about yourself that you like. Like, I would say for a while I was very self-conscious about how I talk a lot. Like, I would be like, oh, I don't want to raise my hand in class too much because then people in my class will think I'm annoying. And I think you start to overthink those things, but I've come to a point now where I think that my comfort in talking and my general, like, excitement when I talk, I talk really loud whenever I get excited about something. And you know, sometimes people are like, oh my god, you're talking so loud, and I get a little self-conscious about it, but then I remember, I'm like, well, I was just excited, and that's something that I actually really like about myself. Like, I would rather be super emoted and throwing my hands around throwing my hands around and being loud about something that I'm excited about than just be talking in, like, monotone and not, you know, like, so, like, it was coming through. I think it took time, but, like, realizing that, like, some of the traits about myself that I was originally uncomfortable with, like, really sitting into them and just being like, you know what, yeah, like, this is me, and if people don't like it, they don't like it, but, like, I can't control that. Like, what I can control is who I am, and if it's a trait that's not hurting anyone else, then I'm gonna celebrate it. Yeah, exactly. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. So I would say, like, kind of doing some soul searching and just figuring out, like, focusing on the things about yourself that you really enjoy, because it's easy to pick out the things we don't like about ourselves. It's actually harder to sit in front of yourself and be like, okay, so this is what I like. Exactly. And sometimes that can be super hard. And so I think it just took a lot of searching, a lot of me being like, well, I don't like this, I don't like that. And then finally being like, wait, like, I think that's a really good trait. Like, when I see that on other people, I really like that. Like, and so I don't know why I'm being so hard on myself about that. Yeah. And then ultimately just, like, sitting into those things and realizing that those are things that you have, like, for your whole life. Whether things are changing, like, you don't like that hobby anymore, you're doing this now, you don't play that sport anymore, you're doing this now. It's like, those are things that change, and those are good parts of your identity, but finding the things that you know are constant and you can always rely on being a part of you is, like, really important to, like, actually being like, okay, yeah, this is who I am.
Because I think it gives a sense of control. Like, I know I'm loyal. Yeah. So no matter what happens in my life, a breakup, a job, you know, I get fired, I can still know that I'm loyal. Yeah. And my next job, I'm going to be loyal, right? Exactly. So it is something that really, I think our true identity are these attributes. I love that word. There's traits about ourselves that ring true to us, and we know we feel our best when we're living out being talkative, right? Exactly. Like, it's like, this feels me. Yeah. And I think that's something that it really does take a lot of soul searching and introspection, maybe through journaling or watching other people act, and like, oh, that's really cool. I'm impressed. Oh yeah, I love that about myself too. Yeah. I think also, especially for, like, high schoolers or young adults, asking somebody who you trust, like, I'm struggling right now. Like, can you remind me of like something you like about me?
Yeah.
Right? Like that definitely takes vulnerability, but it's more common for our brain and our minds to think negatively about ourselves.
Exactly, yeah.
So we just need that positive reinforcement and that positivity, but also other people do see us so differently and commonly do look at our strengths. And we all need to be reminded of that so we can feel our best and our most true selves possible. Yeah. All right.
We would like to take a pause and thank St. Clair Health for their generosity in sponsoring the 3rd season of Teens Tap In.
At St. Clair Health, we're always improving, building on our commitment to face the challenges of today, making an impact on the communities we serve so we can be stronger together by creating reliable resources that recognize all of our neighbors with access to the highest quality healthcare, advanced care close to home, and a shared humanity that delivers on our joint vision to create a healthier community for all. St. Clair Health, expert care from people who care.
So for the second half of our show today, we're going to be talking to Jackie about her passion project. So Jackie, just give us a little bit more information about your project and what you want to talk about today.
So my topic of choice was dementia, and I really wanted to centralize this around personal experience and just something that I feel like a lot of people go through, but they don't really ever want to talk about it, or I feel like it's just not talked about enough. I feel like we've always been told to be very dismissive of it. And I kind of just wanted to come on and find some things, like whether this be coping mechanisms or just like stages early on that you can identify, like when this is happening within somebody that you care about so much, and just trying to find a way to manage everything, because again, like I don't feel like there's enough like research or relatability for people to understand like how they should go throughout that.
Sure.
And I feel like that can happen even just like with relationships, like what you were saying earlier, like you had that person who cared about you for so long, and then there was a switch where it's like very similar in this sense where you cared about them for so long and then something like just changes. So just trying to be able to identify it and have like social support around you is important.
For sure.
Yeah,
I've had my own experiences with it, so like I said earlier, so I definitely think this topic is super important.
So to start, Jackie, I'm wondering if you would feel comfortable sharing more about your personal experience.
So my main caregivers and parental roles were my grandparents. Alongside, I did have my parents helping me grow up as well, but they worked consecutively all the time. So typically my grandparents would pick me up pretty frequently. Not saying that my parents were never there, like in the past, like love them, like absolutely.
Yeah.
But your grandparents definitely played like a center role in my life. And so over time, this happened like probably about like 5 years ago. My grandfather got dementia and he started to deteriorate pretty fast. He now has Parkinson's, so he can barely process anything. So just kind of like watching that evolve over time, like even just like going away to college and then like coming back home, just within that time frame, you're really seeing them change so much. Like we go through so much like within a month, and then seeing them as well, it's just crazy. And it can be like very detrimental not only to them but also to the people around you. And I feel like that is just something where we need to highlight on how to navigate that. And maybe not make it such a bad thing, because I feel like this is a very depressing topic of conversation. But more so like a beautiful thing, and just like embrace what's around you.
Sure. I mean, I think we do. I think I do want to highlight, like, it is a really hard topic to talk about, because I don't know, what shows up for me is the essence of loss, in a sense of how you expect to see somebody you love, and then to see that look differently for multiple stages is something that isn't easy to cope with, especially when there's such an emotional bond, right? Like Jackie, these are like your
Sorry, I'm a little emotional right now.
Yeah, and this is a place where it's important to feel our feelings, right?
Yeah,
There's strength.
Sure.
There's strength in feeling, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and I can relate to that. Like, I remember one of the first times with my gram, like, when she was like, she called me on the phone and she was like, oh, like, I watched you in the student section of the basketball game yesterday. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, we didn't have a basketball game.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, like, Mount Lebanon, I was watching you in the student section. And I was like, Graham, like, I haven't gone to Mount Lebanon High School in 3 years. Like, I don't, like, I go to Pitt now. Like, and she was like, no, yeah. I mean, like, that's what I meant. But it was, like, the confusion, and it was in such a positive, like, she was just trying to be like, I was looking for you, where were you, you know? But, like, that was the first time I caught it where I was like, oh, like, she's, like, she's confused. Like, she doesn't, you know, and then, obviously, as you go on, there's more, you know, things that pop up, but that was, like, the first time I could really tell, like, okay, like, this is something. And she has good days and bad days, but it's I think it's hard because you start to, you know, like, you can't take it personally, but you almost start to take it personally. And like, I don't know, it's just it's a weird experience that is just not, I mean, I guess it is natural. A lot of people experience it, but it doesn't seem natural. Like, you don't prepare to experience things like that.
Yeah, and I think going back to what we were just saying about the emotional roller coaster that this commonly, which we experience, right?
Yeah.
When as we grow. Jackie.
Yes.
You started, like, this is really something so important to you because of the stigma around this topic. And I'm wondering for you, what would be helpful to share to help normalize this experience?
So I think one of the biggest things to normalize is just talking about it in general and being able to express it to other people, even if they don't understand. Like, just having that comfort system around you to be there for you. Obviously, this isn't a topic of conversation you want to have, like, with anybody, but just having that support, I think, is so important. One of my favorite podcasts, I don't know, it's the Canceled podcast.
Yes, I love that podcast.
What is it?
Canceled.
Oh, Canceled. Yes.
It's so good. One of the main reasons, like, what made me think of this topic was because Brooke was talking about her grandmother and about how she is going through dementia, and she was just saying, like, her frustrations and how, you know, just within her friend group, they're not really supportive of it, or they make fun of it, and just, like, or just be very dismissive of it overall. And so when she was talking about it, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I relate so much. This is crazy. And she was just saying, like, you should never, you know, feel alone. And I feel like that's one of the biggest things, even just with being within outreach in general, is just, like, we had to write those t-shirts and say, like, one thing that, you know, we care about so much. And it's like, we don't want people to ever feel alone. So when I heard that, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I think this is something we really want to even say louder, is you aren't alone, right? You aren't alone in whatever experience you're going through. There is most likely somebody else who is going through a similar experience, and our feelings are something that we are universal, and it's something that I always encourage, finding somebody who you feel safe to be vulnerable with, because we have to share to heal.
Of course.
No, I was just gonna say, like, so I think maybe that is, like, your way of support, like, having people, but, like, what are ways that you think have worked for you when you're looking for support in this situation?
Oh gosh. I guess coping mechanisms that I just have used previously in the past. crochet, huge.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Really big.
Learn
Just
how
to
do
let
it.
everybody know, Jackie is wearing
Yes. Oh my gosh,
a
it's
crocheted
beautiful.
shirt right now, and it is Free People. So it's giving Free People vibes.
Like you could sell that for like
Yes.
$80.
So-
So say it was 3 people and people would believe it.
I just keep
Stop.
staring at it, Jackie. So impressive.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, journaling is really great too.
Yeah.
We mentioned this earlier, but just putting that out there because, you know, again, not everybody's going to understand. So just having that own like space right there, you can always look back on it and reflect on like even just memories or like little things that like you went through like that day with that person.
Mhm.
So it's never lost.
Yeah, for sure. I think also about that, I think it's nice to have your own outlet because sometimes people who are also being directly affected by it don't experience it in the same way as you either. Like for me, like I have 2 older brothers and not that they don't care, I'm sure they do, but it's like they express that in a very different way. They're experiencing it in a very different way. Obviously every person, like their relationship with my grandma is very different than my relationship with my grandma, and so I think it's like even whenever I try and talk to them about it, someone who is being affected by it in the same exact way as me, it's very different, and the conversation isn't as effective as I would maybe want it to be because I expect them to feel the exact same way that I do. And so I really think journaling is nice because it does give you that outlet just to be like, this is how I'm feeling, like, and it doesn't matter if someone else is feeling a different way, like this is my experience.
Right. No, I agree completely. Journaling is definitely the best for sure.
Yeah. Or therapy too.
Yeah, that's true.
I've used therapy for that as well.
Yeah,
It's
because
like a verbal journal.
Exactly, because I think in essence, either talk therapy or some form of journaling, right, which I kind of view as like writing therapy, the same process is taking place, and it's being able to share. And when we're able to share our words and our thoughts, our feelings, our behavior about something, we are processing that information, which allows us to be introspective, to be more self-aware, to just be in a hard experience, which are all important processes to ultimately work through and navigate something that inevitably we didn't want to ever happen to a loved one, but here we are in the reality of the situation, and now we have a choice of how to cope with this.
Do you find it hard to see your grandfather now? Because it's like hard for me sometimes whenever my gram's having a bad day. Like it's like so I feel like it's almost wrong for me because I don't like want to be like distant, but it's like hard to talk to someone you feel like it's not the same person that you're talking to. So like I just wonder if you can relate to that.
Gosh. So recently when I went home for Christmas, I literally had to leave the room because I was like crying so much. I'm crying right now because every time I see him, it just gets worse and worse. And you know, he doesn't even remember my name at this point, so it's really sad.
So why don't we take a break?
That was an intense question.
Yes. All right. So I'm wondering, to wrap up this amazing podcast episode, Jackie, this is a really hard topic, and I can imagine people listening have felt similar emotions. Do you have any advice for those who may have a loved one grappling with dementia?
Yeah, of course. Kind of just what I mentioned earlier with coping mechanisms, finding what suits you the best is ultimately going to help you, you know, get through this, because this is more so like a sense of grief, and finding a way to cope with it in a way, I guess just finding acceptance through that. So, again, whether this be journaling, therapy is also really great as well. That is just kind of some assets that you can use to get through this tougher time.
Yeah. Lastly, this podcast would not be possible without the support of St. Clair Health. Please listen to the following ad.
At St. Clair Health, we're always improving, building on our commitment to face the challenges of today, making an impact on the communities we serve, so we can be stronger together. St. Clair Health, expert care from people who care.
Thank you to all of our listeners for your support, and thank you to Maggie for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. And I'd love the opportunity just to quickly share some Outreach College Crew updates. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and please stay tuned. We are in the midst of planning an awesome Outreach College Crew event that we hope everybody can support. So stay tuned for details on our social media.
The views and opinions expressed in the Teens Tap In podcast represent the opinions of the hosts and their guests. The views and opinions expressed by Outreach Teen and Family Services employees, donors, and volunteers are their own and do not necessarily reflect the view of Outreach Teen and Family Services or the show's sponsors. The content here should not be taken as counseling advice. The content here is for informational purposes only, and because each person is unique, please consult your mental health provider or physician for any mental health counseling or other medical questions. The podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including, but not limited to, establishing a standard of care in a legal sense, or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast. If you find any error in any of the content of the podcast, please contact us at podcasts@outreachteen.org. Outreach Teen and Family Services, its sponsors, donors, and partners expressly disclaim any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages whatsoever arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, reliance on, or inability to use this podcast or the information presented in this podcast. Please go to www.outreachteen.org to see the complete notice and disclaimer for the podcast episodes.